Alright, let's do one of these.
Comics are weird.
So, some context for those of you who don't follow the week-to-week goings-on in the world of the mainstream Big Two superhero comics publishers, aka a sizable majority of the world, but probably not the majority of people who watch this show. See, for much of the last decade, with a fairly recent acceleration, Marvel Comics has been undertaking a long-term upending of many traditional flagship characters previously incarnated as white men into new identities as not necessarily white men, both by creating canonically secondary or support characters to major franchises, bringing in alternative versions from one-time tangential timelines, or just the standard issue passing of the torch. In no particular order, this roster has included but is not limited to a young female Wolverine, a Pakistani Muslim Ms. Marvel, a Korean Hulk, Gwen Stacy if she was a superhero instead of a martyr, Gwen Stacy if she was Deadpool for some reason, a Latin American Miss America, a female Thor, an Asian female Iron Patriot, a black female Iron Man, female Captain Marvel, black female Captain America, who's also the time-traveling daughter of Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, alternate universe female Bucky Barnes, possibly the de facto grandfather of the whole movement Miles Morales, aka the half-black, half-Latino Ultimate Spider-Man, likely a whole shitload of people I'm forgetting about, unfortunately, a bunch of original, similarly diverse characters as well. It also turned out Iceman was gay, LOL Top Gun reference, OMG, I just realized that reference is now tied enough to be a dad joke, dear God, where did my life go? And speaking of which, a shitload of these characters are also themselves somewhere on the LGBTQ spectrum, and that's just super. Some of the books that have spun out of this initiative have been good, some of them have not. Some of the characters have become popular, some of them have not, but all of them have managed to piss off a vocal contingent of whiny entitled fanboys who, along with managing to drown out any reasonable criticism, especially don't like that many Marvel writers have opted to make fun of them within the pages of the comics themselves. Amusingly, the response to much of this has been for said fanboys to pay obsessive attention to Marvel Comics sales figures and post rambling screeds about how correct they've been proven every time said sales drop, or fail to rise, or look, the data kinda ends up meaning whatever they say it means, so whatever. Now, in and of themselves, comic book sales figures are not an interesting story because it largely doesn't matter at this point. Marvel and DC are making more money than the gross domestic product of some small countries, and probably a couple of largish ones in the not-too-far-off future, off of whatever their next respective movie is, even if nobody actually likes it. And understanding the circumstances by which we've arrived at this point, and why the more vociferous complainants about Marvel publishing SJW comics are missing the point, actually is pretty interesting. See, here's the thing. For the most part, comic books do not make a lot of money. They don't precisely lose a lot of money either, but, well, suffice it to say, it's not a growth industry right now. Mostly because, in case you hadn't noticed while watching this on YouTube rather than reading it in what us old-timers used to call a periodical, printed media has kind of been getting its ass kicked lately, and if the New York Times is struggling, you can bet your ass Spider-Man is struggling. The reason for this is pretty obvious. About 2.5 to 3 decades ago, comic publishers realized they developed a sizable adult fan base with a lot of disposable income, and in order to cater more directly to that market, they aggressively moved their products out of mainstream venues like newsstands, magazine racks, and convenience stores and into dedicated exclusive comic book shops, effectively creating a market where store owners in their 30s who'd been reading comics forever were selling books from writers in their 30s who'd also been reading comics forever, mostly to other guys in their 30s who'd also been reading comics forever, creating an almost entirely insular marketplace. And for a while, it totally worked. The insular focus did, for a short time, create an environment conducive to mainstream superhero comics digging down into their own minutiae to craft interesting new narratives, but they ran out of ways to do it, and having willingly obliterated the venues by which any new readers or fresh voices might be drawn into this paradigm, the whole system collapsed into an endless succession of continuity-fixated circle jerks capable only of rewarding longtime fans for the act of being longtime fans. Which is how you wind up in a scenario where everyone in the world seems to have heard of these characters, but nobody seems to actually be reading their books in any substantive way. But, because the publishers of said books have by now all largely been absorbed into bigger multinational entertainment corporations, the various properties originating in those books have become super valuable global entertainment brands. The world as a whole may not give a shit about the actual comic books by and large, which, yes, is very unfortunate, but the industry did it to itself, but it loves these characters, which effectively has led to the current state of affairs where both major publishers, but especially Marvel, by all indications mainly view their actual comics publishing divisions as beta testing laboratories for them to workshop stories and characters they might want to turn into movies and TV shows someday. I.e., remember how the Inhumans suddenly got real important again a few years ago in the comics without anyone really asking for it, and now lo and behold they're like 80% of the ongoing storyline of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and about to get their own show? Yeah, about that. That, folks, is almost certainly the reason why Marvel is so gung-ho about not only diversifying their lineup, but specifically diversifying their marquee name lineup instead of just inventing new diverse characters outright. They're on borrowed time from being in a bit of a pickle. See, they've got the whole damn planet on board with the idea of superhero universe continuity in movies, but unlike the comics, the men behind the masks won't stay young forever, and the world has fallen so in love with the characters, it's likely people won't just go along with someone else playing Steve Rogers, Tony Stark, Star-Lord, or whoever else. And they also know that the world is only going to become increasingly more diverse, along with audiences outside the US and Western Europe becoming more and more important to the bottom line, which means they need to be planning now for the, let's say, 2035 incarnation of the Avengers to look a lot more like this than like this. And along with the potential to bring about new variations on well-worn storylines, experiments like biracial Spidey, Black Lady Cap, Muslim Miss Marvel, Asian Hulk, Girl Thor, etc. are potential opportunities for developing the characters that can help make that happen. You can see this kind of thinking in the rest of Hollywood too. You think Matt Damon really wants to be in The Great Wall? Matt Damon is middle-aged and was never that convincing as an action hero. He should be settling down, going for a couple more Oscars and shoring up his cred, but he also knows the score. In 2017, if China doesn't think of you as a movie star, you aren't really a movie star anymore, so there he goes. But as far as superheroes go, you can most recently see this kind of long-term thinking paying off in the second trailer for Logan, where social media went apeshit once the mysterious little girl character popped her claws out. Now, comics fans were psyched because it means, oh hey, she's X-23, but since nobody who isn't immersed in comics culture, meaning again most people, has even heard of X-23, the majority of that hype was coming from a more direct place of, whoa, Wolverine but a little girl? That's different. And even though this is an R-rated movie, you'd best believe plenty of girls around that character's relative age saw that and already think Wolverine, but you know, me, is about the coolest shit they've ever heard of. So whether or not you, me, or comics fans in general liked, disliked, or even purchased comics about Girl Wolverine, Marvel doesn't give a shit. They've workshopped her concept until it was ready, and now she's gonna be a movie star potentially worth more profit than the most successful comic book can hope to achieve. Basically, if you want to ha-ha at Marvel for not breaking the bank on this or that new comic, well, go ahead, dudes, whatever makes you happy, but you should probably know that you're not exactly revealing the Pentagon Papers here with the sales data. Marvel demonstrably does not give a shit. I mean, would they like to get a best-selling book out of Korean Hulk? Yeah, sure, everyone loves extra money, but the top shot callers at Walt Disney aren't losing any sleep over it. Where they become interested is if and when Korean Hulk's concept has been found viable enough for the movies to potentially hand the Hulk role off to some money-making K-pop kid whenever Mark Ruffalo decides he's got enough money. Now, you don't have to like this by any stretch of the imagination. Frankly, much like the shift to the insular comic shop sales model, the whole idea of publishing lines as little more than test kitchens for future multimedia brands might be leading to refreshing new ideas for now, but it doesn't feel like an especially sustainable model for encouraging real depth of long-term creative projects, and that's worth worrying about. But if you're gonna complain, fellas, at least understand what you're actually raging against, because if your knockout punch is, that one comic isn't a bestseller, well, Marvel's is gonna be something more along the lines of, oh, what's that? We can't hear you over this giant pile of money we're about to make from replacing Captain Marvel with his own distaff counterpart.